This is The Naked Life with Roxanne Noor. Hello guys, thank you for joining me today. I think this dialogue with myself and also simultaneously with you in spirit is going to help us to understand that the psychic weight that we're feeling of suffering can be made into something productive. And the way it can, the method that it can, I truly believe from all my social justice work, not only in America, but globally as well, is through what I would call micro philanthropy. And this is the focus on localization, and this is also the focus on one's uniqueness of their own life. So a lot of the time with social justice work or giving or donating, we always think that it has to be financial, number one. We see it as giving money to a large organization. But one thing to note is a lot of organizations, the larger they grow, the more messy they become. And a lot of people trying to do good, when it becomes larger and larger, there's actually a lot of darkness that's there. And when we're donating to one of these entities, we don't really know what the money is going to. And when it's growing in size and it's getting a lot of funds, a lot of the time the money is getting embezzled. A lot of the time it's not being used properly. This has happened with huge organizations like Feed the Children, that's getting millions of dollars. And American Parkinson's Disease Association was also outed. So just donating blindly maybe isn't even doing as much help as we see. We're not even getting that feedback mechanism of doing good. So we're not seeing the look on the people's faces that we're helping. We're not having this really tangible feeling of what we're doing as being helpful. So micro philanthropy takes a completely different approach. And it's one that doesn't buy into just giving to these large organizations. I just want to give one more example that was huge. One was the UN, when they went to go help Haiti, they actually ended up giving cholera and killing over 10,000 people, and many, many people remained sick. And not only did this happen, but because they denied it for over 5 years, it just grew in proportion. And so basically to eradicate this disease and denying it for so long, now they need $2.27 billion to give back in relief. And the whole intention itself was good. And it ended up absolutely horribly. A few other examples I want to give of institutions failing us and the importance of the individual is, for example, the US government. When Kenya was going through a really tough time with food, the US government was dropping bags of rice from airplanes. And this is helpful maybe in the moment, but it's a band-aid. It's not going there and asking the people, how can we help you to help yourself? This is the greatest way we can help anyone, is giving them sovereignty. It's the whole notion of teaching a man to fish rather than just plainly giving him one fish and then he starves the next day. So we're seeing this all the time. The US government giving handouts to a lot of marginalized people instead of taking real actionable steps. So, for example, the inner city, what they need more than anything else is to rebuild schools, to put a focus on education so people can get out of cycles of poverty. It's not giving them $200 a month. I mean, that can only help at a certain point. So the focus would be on going to people and asking them, like, what is it you need? So this is one of the most simple yet profound questions. What do you need? And this happens through helping people in our own lives. I will give you an example. So I live mostly in Thailand when I'm not traveling the world. And when I'm in Thailand, there's a lot of Burmese people that live there. They live there because they are often working really hard and then sending funds back to Burma to help their families. So about over a year and a half ago, I was speaking to one of my Burmese friends named Nai. And Nai was telling me what was going on in his home country. And what was going on was absolutely atrocious. Basically, Burma was seized by the military coup. Their leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, was captured and taken. They had been killing thousands of local civilians who were protesting peacefully. And Nai was in complete disarray because his family's home village had been burned to the ground and they were on the run. And he wasn't sure what was going to happen to them. And I could see the fear in his eyes. I could see the sadness. And yeah, my question was very simple. It was, yeah, what do you need? Like, what do you need from me? What would help you to eradicate this issue over time? What can we do? And so he told me about the civil disobedience movement that was going on there and the way people, so many people, didn't have food or clean water, and people were dying from these really common things that were being stripped from them. And so I decided to start a fundraiser that has still been going on to this day. And we collect money and we have a village that we send it back to in Burma, where there are leaders of the civil disobedience movement who are then giving the money to people, giving the money for food, for water, and we're also seeing what's happening with this money. So it's really beautiful. And outside of just monetary things, there was also the sense that we are in Thailand, which is on the border of Myanmar, and most people don't even know what's going on there. And so we started to do events where we were just raising awareness on what was going on in Burma and creating a dialogue about the problems that were happening, that were affecting the people in our small community. And this really helped Nai and his Burmese friends to feel seen, for people to empathize with them, for strangers to ask them, hey, you know, what's going on? How can I help you? And this provided so much relief. To me, helping my Burmese friends in this way provided so much more than any time I just blindly donated money to a cause. And life is asking us for these things in many ways. Maybe your friend's homeland isn't being burned to the ground and it's something more subtle. So I'll give you an example of something more subtle that all of us can kind of relate to: work. So many people I know are small business owners. One of my best friends, Brogan, is a small business owner of a vegan restaurant. And when COVID was happening, so many people, most people, were completely letting go of half their staff because they weren't needed. And what Brogan decided to do was she decided to keep everyone on and continue to pay them out of her own savings just because she could. And these are people who have stayed with her for over 6 years now. And even after COVID, they worked for her even harder, and they love her and they respect her. And some of them even have photos of her face on their walls of their homes and invite her to their weddings, and they're very close. And so these are things that we can all think about. How are we relating to people in our work? How are we relating to people closest to us? And another example of this, what she does is she does not cut corners in business. So having a vegan restaurant, all of the food she gets, she makes a really good job of making sure that it's local. So she's not feeding into having a huge carbon footprint where things are being exported from the other side of the world. She's going and she's seeing what Thailand itself has to offer, and she's working with local farmers. And this helps because it makes the taste of the food even better. It's more economical. It's supporting the local farmers. So all of these decisions are innately important, and they create social change. Another thing that can help to create social change is looking at yourself and seeing what pulls most on your heartstrings. So, my grandmother has always believed that children are the most vulnerable in the population. They have basically no rights. They are very suggestible at a young age. They're like a sponge, they're absorbing everything. And their environment does matter to a certain point. And with kids who don't have a family, there's often feelings of being completely displaced and lost out in the world. And so, what she decided to do was she created orphanages in Mumbai that housed children and gave them an education. And this was huge, especially in a city like Mumbai, because what happens to children who go out and are forced to live on the streets with no parents is gangs approach them. And what gangs do a lot of the time with little girls is they force them into sex trafficking. And what they do with little boys, maybe you saw this also in the movie, by the way, Slumdog Millionaire, it points to this. They take little boys and they dismember them. So they'll cut off their hands or their legs, or they'll throw acid in their face and they'll blind them. And then they'll force them to go on the streets and beg for money. And whatever money is collected goes back to the gangs and to not the children. So taking kids out of a potential situation like that and giving them a roof over their head, giving them a sense of community, giving them education changes so much. And all of this came back to the simple notion that she really feels a lot in her heart for children. More than any other demographic, it's kids. And all of us have something that pulls on our heartstrings the most. Another example of this is my partner, my lover, Misha. He is vegan because when he traveled to Brazil, he saw the cruelty that animals had to face. He saw the way chickens were locked up so close to each other, and he felt that these little beings are so vulnerable because they don't have a voice for themselves. So he became a voice for them. And in his own daily actions, he's a vegan and he helped to propel the whole movement of veganism because he was an advocate for it. And he was an advocate for it through his own embodiment. And this is what we can do. We can look at the fabric of our own lives and we can choose. So micro philanthropy goes into empowerment directly because it's about you as an individual. What matters most to you? And what skills do you have to give back to the world? So when I was working in New York, I really felt that one of my primary skills was the written word. And I used writing to work for nonprofits and create education and awareness for people that would propel them into taking actionable steps to help. So, writing has been a huge tool for me for social advocacy. And it's fun for me because I genuinely enjoy writing and I genuinely like that I am giving myself to causes that I believe in. One of them, as a woman, was seeing the way in which girls are often forced into sex trafficking in the Bronx and in Queens. And I was living in Queens at that time. And there was this feeling of like the sheer statistic of how many girls and the way they were tried like adults and being persecuted and not being able to go to school and all the psychological manipulation that was happening around sex trafficking. I felt it so strongly, and this is what allowed me to help nonprofits, to write articles, to go to girls like that, to speak to them. And this is so important, is what is speaking to us and what skills do we have to give back. So instead of just giving our money to organizations and not knowing where it's going, not seeing that feedback of gratitude from the people, we can go into our own lives and look at the suffering and look at the way that we can ease suffering. And this can be as simple as a friend in need, as lending a helping hand. And life is giving us these things all the time. So I just want to say that the power always lies with us, the individual. It's not when policies change. It's not when suddenly President Trump gains consciousness. It's not about them. Actually, the way in which we feel about life, if we feel that the world is a desperate, cruel, and ugly place, we are just going to see that all the time. The more we're working towards making the world beautiful, the more we truly feel it is, because we are embodying it. And we all have this power. And it is a human right, it is our birthright to feel happy. And the way in which we feel happy, it's so obvious. It's giving to others, it's giving to ourselves. And we all have this capacity.